Well, I have a couple of other hopefuls here, so I am just comparing this to see if I notice any obvious differences. It looks pretty hopeful actually. I think this is my donor. I've got another one here too in a case in this plastic bag, but this one is more complete, although I can see it's had a hard life. When I'm searching for spare parts to use, I generally use the pieces that are the most stripped down and offer and have the least number of pieces on them, if there's enough there to work with. Because let's pull that curtain across, the sun's come around and it's a bit contrasty. Alright, so this is going to be the donor. The blades in this one are not particularly stunning looking, but the mechanism plate doesn't show any corrosion, and I think that'll probably clean up well. So I'll just strip this one down. I don't need to remove the retainer ring from the back of the case because I'm not interested in the back of the case. It's always best to have my spare parts as completely assembled as possible because it makes it easier to identify what I've got rather than tiny little individual pieces. I'll just remove that flash contact. Yes, this is seen better days too, which is probably how it ends up as in the spare parts bins. That's a little bit corroded. That flash contact I'm pleased to see, because although the one that I've got is in good order, a little bit of surface corrosion but nothing major, these plastic contact blocks are fragile, very easily damaged, very frequently damaged, and of course, like everything in life, there's no parts. I'll pop that to one side. That comes out. The case we don't need to deal with at the moment. We're interested in the mechanism plate. We'll have that stuff off the mechanism plate. Only half of this lever is present, the top half's not there. And here I have it. So let's just check. Well, that certainly moves freely. The retard gear train swings in and out nicely. This is very, very dirty. I'm going to have to spend some time cleaning it up because of course it's been sitting loose in the spare parts boxes for probably a long time. A lot of my spare parts didn't come to me as complete cameras, of course. They came to me as bits and pieces, other people's leftovers. Generally anything that falls into my hands that could be resurrected and put back into service tends to get put back into service. Right, well this I'll clean up, just cotton buds, naphtha, a little bit of time, flush out that retard gear train. I generally don't remove them from the mechanism plate to clean them because it's a bugger setting the timing back up, but I will if I have to. This one I'll looks well enough. I think once it's clean it'll probably be good. So I'll clean this stuff up. Well, I have my mechanism plate cleaned. I've cleaned and lubricated the retard gear train with a bit of graphite powder. The mechanism plate looks to be in great order. It's just dusty really more than anything else. So anyway, I'll just assemble these components now. Oh, this ring here, I'm going to lubricate that with, typically I use graphite powder, but I'm just going to use some molybdenum paste. Just give that a very light wipe. And molybdenum paste, you need very little, just leaving a slightly dirty mark on the surface of that metal. That's all you're going to need. Here's the retainer. It only goes in one position. It's located with a rivet so it can't go in any other position. And we've got my screws. Now the 4 screws, 3 of them are the same length, one is longer than the others. The longest screw goes in this position. But if you put the longest screw through somewhere else, you'll notice it because it sticks up in one of the places on the other side of the mechanism plate. You can see it poking through and it will cause you grief. If it's sticking up, it'll end up catching on something. So I get my 3 short screws in here. Now all these screws, you just get them in place first. Once they're in place, then do them up tight. Not before, otherwise you probably find that things don't line up exactly well. Let's get them all in position first. That's the 4th, and it's the long one. Let's do that up, that one, that one. Check that the blade actuating ring moves smoothly, and it does. And on the top we have our lever that moves the blade actuating ring. So I'll lubricate this with a little bit of a wipe of graphite, molybdenum paste on its pivot point and on that slotted hole where it picks up that lever. Now on this shutter there was a shim washer on the top of that setting lever, and I'll put that back in place. That's set right there. It's difficult to get into position if they are present. If they're off centre, then you'll find that instead of they're holding things down, hold things tight instead of letting things move freely. Run that screw down and check that that lever moves freely, and it doesn't, it's tight. So my washer may not be centred correctly, or it may not even be required. Some cameras have them, some cameras do not. It's to take up excess space at this point if there's too much clearance there. Let's try this without it. There's a little bit of clearance there. That washer is certainly not flat though. It suggests that it's been distorted in some fashion. It's probably been put on crooked and it's ended up being trapped and done up tight, and that's distorted it. It doesn't lie flat, and so that it's not giving the correct spacing. I'll see if I can flatten it out and put it back. Oh yeah, it's fairly soft, I'm going to have a go at that. See if we can get that in position. Unhook that spring, that's not helpful. Yeah, it's certainly not dead flat. That looks seated better. See if I can run the screw up. What's it like now? Oh, that's good. That's good. That's moving freely and we don't have the rattle. That's just about ideal. So you're straightening it, flattening that washer out and making sure it was centered correctly, wasn't trapped anywhere. That's made the difference. That works very well. So I'm pleased with the state of that mechanism plate, and I'll clean my shutter blades and then that can be assembled to the case. So the shutter blades, I'll get these shutter blades out. Now these they look to be in good order, which is the odd thing about this shutter, because we know the shutter's had water through it, or in it, so it's been splashed, but the blades must have had enough oil contamination on them that they haven't corroded at all. They look good. So I'll clean these and see what they look like. If they have any marks on them, I can always polish the marks off with some metal polish, with some Brasso. But may not even need to do that. Let's just check what they clean up like. I'll just clean one surface of the blades first and look at them. When I'm cleaning them, you can get a very good impression of any surface roughness, because the cotton bud will not be smooth as you run it across them. You can feel it if there's anything to catch the cotton bud. Just looking at the state of these, there's little marks on the end there where the blades overlap, but nothing there looks serious. That's not something I would normally bother to polish for, so I probably won't. That's blade number 1. It's got 2 holes in it. The other blades are all the same. I'll just clean these last 3 blades and I'll assemble the shutter and we'll see if they swing in and out freely. Yeah, they're not really dirty at all. They're in great order. Typically the cleanest surface is the back surface, because the front surface is open to contaminants more often if someone's unscrewed the lens to have a look inside. Well, they look good. I'll assemble this shutter now. So first thing I want to do is unhook that, swing that arm out into the blade's open position. In the middle of the picture, we sort of are, and start putting the blades in place. And the blades start going on from this position. And go around in an anti-clockwise direction. And the 5th blade here. Now I need to put the case over those. Of course it only goes on in one position, and I've got to avoid this setting lever hitting anything, so I'll just get this round here where I can see it. It goes on there. I'm lining up my flash contact hole, actually the square one, because I can see that easily. And the 3 holes line up. Now, screws. I'm going to take the screws from my parts shutter because I know they're in good condition, and the other ones may or may not have some corrosion on them. So I'll put these 3 screws in. I just do them up very lightly indeed, because I do not want to damage a shutter blade if I've managed to displace one while I was lifting the case over it. Right, let's see if those blades will swing in. They do, and I'll hook their spring up. Nice and snappy in action, that's good. I can do those 3 screws up tight and check it again. You don't normally have a problem with a shutter like this in a Retina camera or any other folding camera, but rigid bodied cameras, if the camera's been dropped down on its nose, if the lenses hit the ground, the shutter can be compressed, and that can lead to a case where the shutter blades just will not move freely. Even after you've cleaned them and everything else appears right, you assemble the shutter and the blades won't move freely, and it's because they haven't got enough space. The whole thing's been compressed in. That's not the case here, and it really would be with a folding camera, because of course the struts tend to take up any shock if cameras are dropped on their nose. Well, that's all good. That little lever here, which I mentioned that I really need to remove, of course it's on the mechanism plate here, and it's one that I wouldn't remove, and it's moving nice and freely. So I need to look at my other components now and decide what I can reuse and what I need to hunt out parts for. Pop that to one side and inspect some of this stuff. But the mechanism plate I'm not using, or that blade actuating ring. Or its retaining plate. Now the pallets, the little pinion wheel that drives the pallets, that's certainly got corrosion on it and on that pinion. I probably won't choose to use that. See what else I've got here. And that one's not in stunning condition either. I will check and see if I've got a better example of the pinion. The pallets, they appear fine. They'll just probably need a wipe. The flash contact, and the flash contact, this is the plastic body here. I've got to get that plastic insulator slug out of there so I can reassemble this. These are very fragile. They're just some acrylic type plastic, no, styrene type plastic. If you get any solvent near them, they'll just disappear into a sticky mess. I've just got encouraged that little plastic insulator out of there, out of the tube at the bottom, so I can reuse it. I'll have to get a needle and fight with that, but it'll be nothing for you to see. It's pretty tiny. Well, I did get that insulating slug out. Here it is here. And I'm pointing at it with a small sewing needle. Well, I was a second ago, now it's just run away into the distance. Oh no, there it is. And it's just a tiny slug of plastic. About 1/2 millimetre in diameter perhaps. A little bit more than 1 millimetre long. But that's the insulator, and that's needed. The screw presses against that insulator, and the insulator in turn presses against the wire and presses it against the contact to make good contact. I'll pop that carefully to one side because, as you can imagine, they are very easy to lose, and they're a bugger when they're lost. Now my retaining screw for my flash contact, I've got that. It's a bit dull looking, but that's not going to cause me a problem. So, this all looks very big now. I better zoom back out. The flash contact goes down into this squared hole in the case here. This metal plate goes underneath it, and the flash contact is often damaged, split, but spread out at the base, and it's very reluctant to go down that square hole because it's more gone sort of trumpet shaped. So it can require a lot of mucking around to get that to encouraging that down that hole. Of course, it was not easy to get the thing apart because it didn't want to come apart. What I'll have to do is loosen my 3 case screws up to give me maximum amount of wriggle room at this point, I think. So I've just turned them very slightly. If I turn them more than about 30 degrees or so, what will happen is that the blades might be able to escape and I'll have to rebuild it all again. And it's plain hard to get. It's nearly it. Oh, you needn't watch me fight with this for 10 minutes. I'll bring you back. Probably as soon as I turn the camera on, it'll fall into place. Well, it did go back in. I have to say it fought all the way, but it did go. It's fixing screw in place. And it looks fine from the bottom. You wouldn't know that there was a problem. But there certainly had been. It had given me some grief. Okay. What stage am I at? Oh, yes, I've got pallets and the little wheel that drives the pallet wheel. Now that pinion there I may or may not use. I'll see if it'll clean up.